Okay, so right now we have a really short lesson on lunar and solar eclipses. This is going to be a short one, but the thing you really need to remember is right now we're talking about the Earth's shadow, and this is not the phases of the moon. So while yes, we're talking about Earth's shadow, we are not talking about the phases of the moon. That's the most common misconception students have, is that the shadow of the Earth causes the moon phases. No, it causes eclipses. Here's a lunar eclipse. Okay, we're about to start over again here, but the shadow of the Earth starts to cover up the moon. Okay, and for a time the moon is going to be totally dark and a total lunar eclipse. So here's what happens. The sun is shining, all this light. Okay, now the Earth leaves a shadow. Okay, so the sun is no longer shining, of course, behind where the Earth is blocking it out. Whenever the moon falls into that shadow, we have what's called a total lunar eclipse. Now draw this all very carefully so you'd be able to remember it better. A total lunar eclipse is where we cannot see the moon. So the lunar eclipse is when we can't see the moon. A solar eclipse is when we cannot see the sun. Here's what one looks like. This is out of an airplane window. You can see the shadow of the moon moving across the Earth. So if you're standing here, well, it would be just like nighttime. It would be so dark because the moon is blocking all that light out. Here's a different video. This one is taken from the ground. As the moon moves in front of the sun, it totally blocks out the sun. One last fun video. This was taken during a partial solar eclipse, but a plane crossed in front of the camera while it was taking the pictures. Well, anyway, in this case, a solar eclipse. Of course, we've got sun shining again. Draw this very carefully. And the moon starts blocking out, leaves a shadow behind itself. And that shadow cannot cover the entire Earth like it could up here with the lunar eclipse. That shadow leaves a little spot on the Earth. Now, if you're standing in that little spot, you're seeing a total solar eclipse. Otherwise, outside of that, you'll have what's called a partial solar eclipse. So it'll be kind of darker, but it's not going to block out the entire sun like it would here in the total solar eclipse. This is a video showing a map of where the total solar eclipse would be traveling across the Earth. Okay, in this one case, this is a solar eclipse that went over the Indonesian islands, but we have maps of where these eclipses will happen from between now and 1,000 years from now. You can find maps on NASA between 2001 and 3000 of where these eclipses will be seen. Okay, the one we just saw might have been this one, or might have been this one, but you can see where we are, we don't have any eclipses coming in the near future. Okay. If we looked through all the maps, we could find when the next time we will be able to see a total solar eclipse is, because they kind of scar the map. Now, moving on just for a second, take a look at this. Here's a picture of a full moon taken in Seattle, so Washington, here in the United States. And this is a picture of the moon taken the same day from Perth, Australia. If you look really closely, you can see it's upside down. What in the world is going on here? Why is the moon upside down? Well, the people standing on top of the Earth see the moon in this orientation. It's got the Moria, the big dark splotches areas are kind of toward the top. But if you were to be standing on the bottom side of the Earth, it would look the opposite, because literally human beings are standing on the opposite sides of the Earth, so they're upside down compared to where we are. If you were to take a picture tonight of the moon, fly around the Earth, let's say to Australia, and take another picture of the moon, it would look upside down. So here's one last little animation. This has got the moon, it's going around in a circle around the Earth. Right now it's in an eclipse. Now in 2 weeks it'll be over here. So it might be a solar eclipse. A question a lot of people have at this point is, well, why don't we have eclipses every 2 weeks? If the moon is constantly going around the Earth, and every full moon it's got to go back here, why don't we always have an eclipse every time we have a full moon? The answer is the moon's orbit is tilted. So if the sun is over here shining in, the sun can hit the entire Earth. The Earth's shadow will be back here, but the moon will get sunlight from above the Earth. Later on, it'll get sunlight from below the Earth. So the moon's shadow will pass below the Earth. Whenever the orbits line up, and let's say your eyeballs are the sun and the moon is right here, then we'll have a solar eclipse. Or if the moon passes back here, then we'll have a lunar eclipse. But for most of the year, basically the shadow of the Earth and the moon miss each other. So in our notes, what we have is, why don't we get an eclipse every 2 weeks? It's because the moon's orbit is tilted. If it weren't tilted, we would have an eclipse every 2 weeks. Here's the drawing I have. So you get the moon, and it'll drop down below sometimes. 6 months later, the moon will be above. But I can demonstrate that for you in class if you have questions. So ask questions if you have them. Otherwise, this is it for the notes.